Russia's hold on Crimea depends on a single artery, the 600-kilometer M14 highway stretching from Rostov through Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol to the peninsula, and that artery is bleeding. This corridor represents Putin's most significant territorial gain from 2022, the logistical backbone connecting occupied Crimea to Russian territory, and every convoy carrying ammunition, fuel, air defense systems, and troops to the peninsula travels this road. The Kerch Bridge exists, but its capacity remains limited, and it has sustained damage multiple times. Without the M14, Crimea suffocates, and the heart of this land bridge beats in Zaporizhia. Lose Zaporizhia, and the corridor becomes vulnerable. Lose the corridor, and Crimea becomes an isolated fortress with dwindling supplies. Moscow understands this reality with absolute clarity, which explains why Russia deployed motorized infantry divisions, VDV airborne divisions, the 11th VDV Brigade, and elements of the 58th Combined Arms Army to defend this line. VDV and Marine Corps units hastily pulled from the Donetsk offensive were redirected to Zaporizhia. The Kremlin chose to protect this corridor, even at the cost of weakening its primary offensive toward Pokrovsk. But the situation is shifting. Ukraine is pushing back Russian positions in Zaporizhia, seizing initiative in the 7-month Battle of Stepnogorsk, and most critically, bringing the M14 highway under fire control with long-range drones. Putin's land bridge is no longer secure, and Crimea's logistical lifeline grows weaker by the day. The current crisis began with Russian infiltration attempts in early 2025. Between January and February, Russian forces executed deep penetrations toward Vesianka and Novoivanivka, achieving small but dangerous territorial gains. The operational objective was clear: encircle Orikhiv, consolidate southern positions, and create northward pressure toward Zaporizhia city itself. The Kremlin presented these infiltrations as successful buffer zone operations, evidence that Russian momentum continued. Ukraine responded by launching a systematic counteroffensive, reclaiming lost ground step by step. The Ukrainian General Staff withdrew the 153rd Mechanized Brigade from the Kherson front and redeployed it to Zaporizhia to reinforce the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade along the Stepov-Mali-Sherbaki axis. The main counterattacks towards Stepnogorsk are being executed by military intelligence special forces, indicating Ukraine has committed its most experienced operators to this critical sector. The results speak clearly. Since January 2025, Ukraine has recaptured approximately 65 square kilometers in the Zaporizhia direction alone. Stepnogorsk, located 25 kilometers south of Zaporizhia city, represents a key node in Russia's plan to advance northward and threaten the regional capital. A massive concentration of Russia's elite forces is currently active in this area. Yet despite this overwhelming force deployment, as the Battle of Stepnogorsk enters its 7th month, Russia has failed to achieve significant gains. Ukrainian forces have made substantial progress within Stepnogorsk itself, pushing Russian positions back from the town center and northern sectors. Ukraine's hold counterattack consolidate cycle is systematically neutralizing every Russian assault wave. This represents the clearest indication that Russia's offensive capacity in Zaporizhia is beginning to erode. Ukraine conducted an even larger operation not just along the Orikhiv-Stepnogorsk line, but further east at the intersection of Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions, and the story of how this operation unfolded reveals the evolution of modern warfare. According to a detailed investigation by the Kyiv Independent, Ukraine's counter-offensive in this border region was maintained under extreme operational security. A commander from the 148th Artillery Brigade stated that out of a brigade exceeding 2,000 personnel, only approximately 10 individuals were aware of the operation beforehand. This secrecy was vital because the modern battlefield no longer permits large-scale troop movements to go undetected. Drones monitor every road, every field, every trench line continuously. Preparations focused primarily on neutralizing Russian artillery capabilities. Approximately 150 Russian artillery pieces were identified within the roughly 30-kilometer zone between Huliaipol and Berezov, and these systems were targeted before infantry units advanced. Artillery fire and drone strikes operated in coordination, and even weather conditions turned to Ukraine's advantage as fog concealed positions and movements. The brutal reality of contemporary warfare became evident in the operation's execution. Gaining ground represents only the first challenge. Ukrainian reinforcements sometimes walked 10 to 20 kilometers to reach frontline positions because vehicles were large, noisy, and easily detected by reconnaissance drones. After every successful counterattack comes the withdrawal, and the retreat proves just as lethal as the attack itself. The most striking detail, however, is this. According to Ukrainian commanders, Russian forces believed the initiative remained theirs until Ukrainian attacking units appeared behind their positions. The front line is highly visible through drone surveillance, but visibility does not equal comprehension. Russia may have drones in the sky, but it cannot always interpret what Ukraine is preparing. This operation stands as living proof of that intelligence failure. The successes in Zaporizhia extend beyond frontline recapture. The real strategic blow is being delivered far behind Russian lines at Crimea's logistical lifeline. Ukrainian defense forces have established fire control over sections of the Taganrog-Jankoy highway, the main land corridor feeding occupied Crimea. Fire control does not mean full physical occupation, but it means rendering the road operationally dangerous through drone strikes, convoy interdiction, and systematic logistics disruption. This represents a nightmare scenario for Russian military planners. Two main routes deliver supplies to Crimea, the M14 highway and the Kerch Bridge. Ukraine now maintains effective drone-based fire control over critical sections of the M14. So, what is the status of the Kerch Bridge? The bridge remains standing and operational, but its capacity is inherently limited and it has sustained significant damage on multiple occasions in previous years. If the M14 comes under complete pressure, the bridge becomes the sole remaining critical route, and any logistics chain dependent on a single point of failure is extraordinarily fragile. The Institute for the Study of War's May 9th assessment confirmed this development, stating Ukrainian forces are delivering effective strikes 100 kilometers deep into areas where Russians previously conducted risk-free logistics operations. Commentators analyzing the ISW report stated Russia thought it had secured its land bridge, but they were wrong. This bridge is now very much in play. An atmosphere of open panic now prevails among Russian military bloggers. Journalist Denis Kazansky highlighted this situation by analyzing posts from Russian propagandists. Russian sources openly admit they face significant difficulties intercepting Ukrainian drones. Military correspondents express concern that Ukraine may paralyze not only the road network, but also railway logistics in the south in the near future. Such a scenario would constitute a complete disaster for Russian armed forces. Former militant commander Igor Girkin is among those noting Russia cannot keep pace with these new-generation drone wars. In line with Girkin's assessment about the expanding operational scope of unmanned aerial vehicles, Russian propagandists increasingly highlight security vulnerabilities behind front lines and the mounting pressure on logistics routes. As if validating these concerns, the Hornet drones employed by Ukrainian forces continue infiltrating deep behind the front, targeting Russian fuel tankers, supply convoys, and strategic transportation routes. The TA-5A9 highway, once considered a secure rear area, has become another vulnerable artery. The logistics network does not need complete destruction to collapse. Timing disruptions, rerouted convoys, and forced defensive deployments gradually choke operational tempo. Every delayed truck means less fuel, fewer artillery rounds, and diminished tactical flexibility for frontline units. Ukraine is striking the roads leading to Crimea, but operations are not stopping there. The target has shifted from the corridor itself to where the corridor terminates. On the night of May 5th to 6th, Ukrainian drone strikes hit Russian targets near Jankoy in occupied Crimea. An S-400 launcher system was struck. 2 mobile fire group vehicles were hit. 1 soldier was killed and 10 wounded. The main strike, however, targeted the Jankoy train station. 5 Russian soldiers were killed, 5 wounded, a locomotive destroyed, and several freight cars damaged. Jankoy is not merely a train station. It is Crimea's most important railway junction. A substantial portion of railway traffic arriving from the Russian mainland via the Kerch Bridge is distributed through this hub. Trains carrying military ammunition, fuel, and personnel are routed from Jankoy to Sevastopol, Simferopol, and southern coastal bases. Any attack on this location directly impacts the entire supply network of the peninsula. Even destroying a single locomotive can cause delays lasting days. And this attack is not isolated. Throughout the week, small-scale drone raids using FPV rockets were reported across Crimea. Ukraine is systematically testing Crimea's air defense capabilities, penetrating slightly deeper with each probe. When these attacks are viewed collectively, the emerging picture is clear. Ukraine is moving step by step towards strategically isolating Crimea, even without fully liberating it through ground offensive. The M14 highway is under constant fire. The T0509 highway is under drone surveillance. The Jankoy railway junction is under attack. And the only remaining route is the Kerch Bridge, a structure that has been damaged multiple times, has limited capacity, and is one that Ukraine has explicitly stated it will strike when conditions permit. How are these developments affecting Russia's overall strategic situation? The impact on frontline operations is severe. The 58th Army and VDV units in Zaporizhia are experiencing supply delays. They are forced to deploy additional electronic warfare and air defense assets for every convoy, which further strains already limited resources and complicates preparations for the planned summer offensive. The constant drone threat is causing serious fatigue and pervasive insecurity among troops. The feeling that we could be struck at any moment is spreading, particularly among logistics personnel and motorized infantry soldiers. Russian military bloggers are openly panicking, stating the rear is paralyzed and electronic warfare systems are inadequate. And these reactions are affecting units on the front lines. Russia's rushed redeployment of VDV troops from Donetsk to Zaporizhia highlights another critical problem. Resources allocated for the main offensive toward Pokrovsk are dwindling, weakening one front to strengthen another. This is a clear sign of an army lacking sufficient forces across the entire theater. And this redeployment demonstrates just how vital the land bridge is. The Kremlin prefers to protect the Zaporizhia line even at the risk of jeopardizing its main offensive in Pokrovsk, because the political cost of losing Crimea far exceeds the cost of slowing progress in Donetsk. From the Russian public's perspective, discussions about the Crimean route being endangered are growing on social media. As military bloggers stir public concern with debates about logistical paralysis and the rear is not secure, Putin's narrative that everything is under control continues to erode. Combined with war fatigue, economic pressure, and fears of renewed mobilization, these debates form a dangerous mixture for the regime. Ukraine is striking at Russia's rear not only along this line, but also in depths stretching from Mariupol to Pokrovsk. Footage released by the Azov Corps shows Ukrainian drones patrolling roads around Mariupol, 160 kilometers behind the front lines. Attacks on Russian vehicles along the T0509 Mariupol-Donetsk highway have been verified through geolocation. This road was once Russia's most secure supply route. It no longer is. Ukrainian unmanned systems forces carried out precision strikes in occupied Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Luhansk regions in early May. Targets included Panzer and Tor air defense systems, PRV-16 and P-18 radar stations, fuel and lubricant depots, ammunition storage sites, and temporary deployment locations. Each target represents a different component in Russia's war machine. Radars provide early warning, air defense protects assets, fuel enables movement, ammunition sustains firepower, and deployment points enable rotation and attack preparations. Ukraine is systematically striking all of them, and operational range is steadily expanding. Ukrainian officials announced that Su-57 and Su-34 aircraft were struck by drones at Shogol airfield in Chelyabinsk, approximately 1,700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. A Karakurt-class missile corvette capable of carrying caliber missiles was struck at the port of Primorsk. Distance no longer guarantees safety. Ukraine's reach extends deep into Russian territory. This is not yet a full-scale logistical collapse, but the effect of partial battlefield air interdiction is unmistakable. Ukraine may not possess the kind of air power NATO would deploy to strike Russian supply lines from above. But if drones can hunt targets more than 100 kilometers away, they begin creating identical effects. Putin's diplomatic moves directly reflect this mounting pressure. Putin has recently made statements suggesting the war is nearing an end. Behind this shift in rhetoric lies slowing momentum on the battlefield, high casualties. Ukraine's capacity to deliver deep strikes, and pressure on oil infrastructure. But tone does not equal policy. Kremlin advisor Yuri Ushakov stated progress in the peace process will stall unless Ukraine withdraws from Donbass. In other words, Moscow still demands territories it has not fully seized by force through diplomatic means. The contradiction is obvious. If Russia were truly dominant on the battlefield, there would be no need for Ukraine to cede territory at the negotiating table. Putin appears to want peace, but what he wants is not peace. It is to have the occupation legitimized through diplomacy, and the growing pressure on the land bridge is weakening this strategy as well. To sit at the negotiating table claiming momentum is on our side, the realities on the front lines must support that claim. Yet in Zaporizhzhia, VDV units are being pushed back, convoys are being hit on the M14, and resupplying Crimea grows harder every week. Looking at the broader strategic picture, what Ukraine is executing along the Zaporizhzhia-Crimea axis is a classic blockade strategy. Rather than liberating Crimea through a direct ground assault, it is severing the lifelines, feeding the peninsula one by one. The three-phase model that retired U.S. General Ben Hodges has been advocating for months is precisely this. First, isolation, then making the situation untenable, and finally, ultimate liberation. Hodges stated in April 2025, there is no need for a frontal assault on Crimea. Cut off the logistics and let time take care of the rest. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War and the Atlantic Council support this approach. Attempting to take Crimea directly is both costly and carries nuclear escalation risk, but logistical isolation makes it economically and militarily unsustainable for Russia to hold the peninsula. Ukraine's operations in recent weeks are effectively implementing the first phase of this model, and there is a significant economic dimension to this pressure. The maintenance costs of Russia's military presence in Crimea, air defense systems, naval forces, ground troops, and infrastructure place heavy burdens on the Kremlin's budget. Every drone attack increases this cost. Damaged equipment must be repaired, finding alternative supply routes is expensive, and resources allocated to protecting convoys cannot be diverted to other fronts. Ukraine is imposing costs of millions of dollars on Russia using drones costing just a few $1,000s each. The asymmetry always favors Ukraine. Putin easily seized Crimea in 2014, but the cost of holding it rises every day, and Ukraine is systematically working to push that cost to an unsustainable level. The water crisis on the peninsula continues. Air defense capabilities are eroding, supply lines are being squeezed, and the 800,000 Russian citizens settled there since 2014 live with the perception that we are not safe. The question is no longer, can Crimea be reclaimed, but how much longer can Russia hold on to Crimea? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this development, so let's discuss it in the comments. To stay informed about comprehensive analyses of the events shaping our world, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. And if you'd like the analysis to continue even when you're away from the screen, join us on Spotify to make long drives shorter and turn traffic into an enjoyable listening experience.